She spent her last breath protecting a wolf cub. The Alpha King stood before her. The forest breathed in whispers of old magic, shadows curling between the twisted trunks like long-forgotten secrets. Lyra moved carefully, her boots sinking slightly in the damp earth, every step measured. The villagers had warned her not to go beyond the boundary where sunlight dared not linger, but the rare herbs she needed would only grow in the cursed heart of the forest. Her hands, calloused from years of tending wounds and stirring poultices, clutched her satchel tightly. She had heard the stories, creatures that could twist the mind, trees that would bleed if touched. But she didn't believe all of them. Fear, she had learned, was something to be understood, not obeyed. Still, as she stepped over a gnarled root and the fog thickened around her, she couldn't deny a chill curling along her spine. A sudden sound made her freeze, a soft, pitiful whine that seemed to come from the underbrush. Lyra knelt, brushing aside the low-hanging branches, and her heart caught. A small wolf cub lay tangled in a hunter's snare, its golden eyes wide with terror, its body trembling. "It's okay," she whispered, approaching slowly. She knelt beside it, speaking in the gentle tone she often used for sick children. The cub's fur was matted with dirt and blood, its tiny paw caught cruelly in the iron snare. The forest seemed to hold its breath as she worked. Lyra's fingers moved with careful precision, loosening the twisted metal. She could feel the raw, instinctive fear of the creature, yet there was also a spark of life in its eyes, a defiance she understood. She had always respected courage, no matter how small. Finally, the snare clicked open. The cub hesitated, then nuzzled her hand, a soft whimper escaping its throat. Relief flooded her, though it was quickly replaced by a creeping unease. The forest was too quiet. The mist thickened, wrapping around her like a living thing. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet seemed to shift. Lyra stumbled as the earth rumbled, a deep, low sound vibrating through the soil. From between the trees, a glowing shape emerged, and her breath caught. It was a trap, one older than any hunter's snare. Lines of magic etched into the forest floor, pulsing with dark intent. "Impossible," she whispered, but it was too late. The magic wrapped around her, invisible yet unyielding. Pain shot through her chest, sharp and unforgiving. She fell to her knees, coughing, the cub at her side whining. Her vision blurred, the world tilting, colors fading into gray. Then, through the haze of pain, she sensed it. A presence. Immense. Immovable. The air itself seemed to bend toward it, carrying an authority that made her knees tremble. Lyra tried to sit up, but the magic weighed her down, like chains of shadow. Her last thought before darkness took her was not fear, but a question she could not voice aloud. Who, or what, is coming? When she opened her eyes again, the forest had changed. The mist was gone, replaced by the dense shadows of colossal trees, their trunks twisting impossibly toward the sky. The air smelled of earth and storm, and something more, ancient. And there, standing before her, was the Alpha, Kyle, the Alpha King. He was taller than any man she had ever seen, his presence commanding the space around him. His eyes shone like silver moonlight, reflecting a world she could not yet understand. Dark hair fell over his shoulders, and his cloak seemed woven from the night itself, moving as if alive. Despite the danger that radiated from him, Lyra could not look away. There was something magnetic in the way he observed her, a mixture of curiosity, caution, and longing. The wolf cub, now standing between them, growled softly, but it was a protective sound, not a threat. Cale's gaze flicked to it, a shadow crossing his face. "You saved it," he said, his voice low and rumbling, almost like the forest itself spoke through him. Lyra tried to nod, but her body shook with exhaustion. "I couldn't leave it," she managed to whisper. Cale stepped closer, each movement deliberate and measured. His eyes held hers, silver meeting green, and in that gaze, Lyra felt the weight of countless years. He was more than a man, more than a beast. He was a force of nature, both terrifying and beautiful. "You carry more than courage," he said. "There is something within you, a fire I have not felt in centuries." Lyra shivered, unsure whether to be afraid or flattered. "I don't understand," she whispered. Kael's expression softened just slightly, and he knelt to look at her at eye level. "Few survive the forest's trials," he said. "Fewer still protect what is meant to be destroyed. You have made a choice, and that choice has brought you here." Her chest ached, and the wound from the magical trap burned faintly. She wanted to ask questions, to demand answers, but her body felt weak, as if her very soul had been drained. Yet in that weakness, she sensed an opportunity, one that was both terrifying and thrilling. Kael extended his hand. "Stand," he commanded. The word was gentle, but carried weight. Lyra hesitated, then placed her hand in his. Heat surged from his skin into hers, and a strange energy coursed through her, knitting the edges of her pain into something bearable. She found herself standing, her knees trembling, but held by the unyielding strength of the Alpha King. The wolf cub pressed against her leg, eyes wide and trusting. Kael glanced at it, a flicker of something like pride passing across his features. "You saved more than a cub," he said quietly, almost to himself.
"You may have saved the forest."
The wind shifted suddenly, carrying with it the faintest echo of voices, whispers of warning, of danger approaching. Lyra turned her head, straining to listen, but all she could hear was the pulse of her own heartbeat and the subtle, commanding rhythm of Kael's presence beside her. She wanted to speak, to ask who he was, why he existed, why the forest obeyed him in ways it obeyed no one else. But before words could form, the shadows around them stirred violently. Trees groaned as if in pain, and the ground beneath their feet shivered with a new, darker energy. Kael's eyes narrowed. "They are coming," he said. "Those who wish to claim the cub and its magic will not wait."
"We have little time."
Lyra swallowed, fear rising in her throat. Yet there was something resolute in her chest. She had faced danger before, but never like this. Never had she felt so small, yet so important. Her choices, her courage, her very life, everything had led to this moment. Kael turned his gaze back to her, the silver of his eyes catching the dim light of the forest. "You will need to trust me," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "If you do not, both you and what you have saved will perish."
Lyra hesitated.
She had always trusted herself, her instincts, her own strength. But now, standing before a being that seemed to hold centuries of knowledge, magic, and power in his gaze, she realized that survival might demand something she had never given. Trust in another. The cub whimpered softly, nudging her hand, reminding her why she was here. She had made a promise, silent but binding. She would not fail. "I trust you," she whispered, almost to herself. But Kael's eyes softened ever so slightly, as if he had been waiting to hear those words for lifetimes. Before she could process what that meant, a sudden crack split the air. The unmistakable sound of approaching hunters, their weapons gleaming faintly through the trees. But these were no ordinary hunters. Lyra could sense it in her bones. They were steeped in dark magic, their presence corrupting the very life around them. Kael's posture shifted instantly, the calm authority replaced by lethal readiness. He placed a protective hand on her shoulder, and Lyra felt a pulse of energy surge from him, almost like the forest itself was standing guard. "They come for the cub," Kael said, his voice low, dangerous. and they will not stop until they have it." Lyra's heart raced. The cub's life, the forest's magic, her own survival. They all hung by a thread. And yet, in the depths of her fear, a strange exhilaration bloomed. She had chosen this path, and now there was no turning back. Cale's eyes met hers once more, silver and piercing. "Hold on to me," he commanded, "or be lost." Lyra nodded, gripping his hand tightly. The forest seemed to exhale, darkness twisting and bending around them. Somewhere in the distance the hunters advanced, their footsteps heavy and unyielding. And in that moment, Lyra understood the truth of the forest, the Alpha King, and the strange bond that had begun between them. Her life, the cub, and the fate of the cursed forest were all intertwined, and her last breath might only be the beginning. The forest was alive with whispers, trees bent and swayed as if they had a language of their own, and shadows stretched in impossible directions. Lyra felt every step she took, as if the ground itself tested her. Her muscles ached from the trap's injury, and the magical wound still burned faintly, a constant reminder of the forest's strange power. Yet despite her exhaustion, there was no turning back. The wolf cub pressed close to her side, soft fur brushing against her hand, as if seeking reassurance that she would not falter. Cale walked beside her, silent and watchful. Every so often he would glance at her, his silver eyes assessing, measuring, weighing, something she could not understand. His presence was like a force of nature, commanding yet protective, terrifying yet comforting. Lyra could not deny the strange pull she felt toward him. She had promised to trust him, and yet trust felt heavier than any burden she had ever carried. "You have stamina," Cale said suddenly, his voice cutting through the quiet. It was not a compliment, but an observation. Few survive the forest's trials, and fewer still endure after saving what should have been left to die. Lyra frowned, slowing her step to look at him. "Why am I still alive?" she asked softly. "Why didn't the forest, or the trap, take me?" Cale's expression darkened, eyes narrowing as he scanned the tree line. "You carry a spark," he said. "A magic that is rare, dangerous, and powerful. It is awakened because of your choices. The forest recognizes it, and so do I." Lyra's heart raced. She had always thought of herself as ordinary, a healer, a protector, but magic? The thought made her uneasy. "I don't understand," she admitted. Cale stopped walking and turned to face her fully. The mist swirled around them like living shadows, clinging to his cloak. "You will in time," he said. "But for now, you must trust me completely. There are forces that would kill you, and the cub to take what you carry." Lyra swallowed hard, her green eyes locking with his silver. The intensity of his gaze was overwhelming, as though he could see inside her, into the very essence of her being. She felt exposed, fragile, yet strangely drawn to him. I will try," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Cale inclined his head, a gesture that was almost approving. "Try," he repeated. "There is a difference between trying and surviving. You will learn it soon enough." As they moved deeper into the forest, Lyra noticed subtle changes. The air grew thicker, charged with energy, and the trees themselves seemed to hum in resonance with Cale's presence. She glanced at the cub, which now followed with careful steps, its small body already showing signs of extraordinary growth. "Why is the cub changing?" Lyra asked, unable to hide her curiosity. Cale's expression darkened. "The cub is no ordinary creature. It is linked to me, to my power, and now to yours. Its growth is tied to the magic you awakened when you saved it. This is why you are here." Lyra's pulse quickened. She had saved the cub because she could not leave a helpless creature to die. But she had never imagined that such a simple act would pull her into a world of power and peril beyond comprehension. Cale stopped near a small clearing where the moonlight pierced the canopy in narrow beams. "Rest," he commanded. And the word carried authority that left no room for argument. The cub curled at Lyra's feet, and she allowed herself to sink to the ground, her body trembling from exhaustion. Pale remained standing, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the clearing. Yet there was something in the way he observed her, something almost protective. "You are stronger than you think," he said quietly, almost to himself. "But strength alone will not save you." Lyra looked at him, curiosity overriding her fatigue. "Then what will?" Cale's gaze met hers, silver light reflecting in the shadows, understanding. "Control and trust." His voice softened slightly, a rare change that made her stomach twist. "You cannot fight this alone, Lyra, and you must learn quickly, X." Before she could respond, a sound split the air, like metal scraping stone. Lyra's heart leapt into her throat. From the darkness beyond the clearing, figures emerged, cloaked and silent, their eyes glowing faintly with unnatural light. The hunters had arrived. Cale stepped between Lyra and the intruders, his body radiating power that made the air vibrate. Shadows seemed to coil around him, thick and alive, responding to his command. "Do not move," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "They are not ordinary hunters. They seek what you carry and will stop at nothing." Lyra clutched the cub tightly, fear gripping her chest, yet a strange calm began to settle over her. She was no longer completely helpless. Kael's presence gave her strength, even as she sensed that her own magic was stirring. The hunters advanced slowly, their movements deliberate, as if aware that any misstep could unleash forces beyond their control. Lyra's eyes widened as she saw one raise a hand, and the ground beneath it writhed as dark tendrils of energy snaked outward. Cale's silver eyes flared. "No," he said, his voice a command that seemed to echo through the trees. The shadows around him surged, forming a protective barrier that repelled the tendrils with bursts of light and energy. Lyra felt something awaken within her, a pulse of power she had never known. Her hands glowed faintly, warmth spreading through her body as if the forest itself answered her unspoken command. The cub whimpered and stepped forward, small sparks of energy dancing across its fur. Kael glanced at her, a flash of surprise in his expression. "You have it," he said, a hint of awe in his tone. "Your power is real, and it is strong. Do not fear it. Use it." Lyra took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. She imagined the tendrils recoiling, imagined the forest bending to protect her and the cub. When she opened her eyes, the energy surged outward, pushing the hunters back, forcing them to retreat a few steps. Cale's lips curved slightly, the first sign of approval she had seen. "Good," he said, "but this is only the beginning. There will be more who come for what you carry, and they will not hesitate to kill." Lyra's chest tightened. She had saved the cub out of compassion, but now she understood the stakes. Every choice she had made, every act of bravery, had brought her to this moment. The cub was no longer just a helpless creature. It was a symbol, a key, a connection to a world she barely understood. Hale stepped closer, his hand hovering near hers, not touching, yet the air between them charged with unspoken intensity. "You are bound to this forest now," he said. "Bound to me, and bound to a fate that you cannot yet see." Lyra swallowed, a mix of fear and fascination twisting inside her. "Bound?" she echoed. Cale's gaze softened, though only slightly. "Yes, you saved what should have been lost, and for that, you are part of this story, part of this realm. There is no going back." The forest seemed to pulse in agreement, leaves rustling as if alive, whispering secrets older than time. The cub pressed against Lyra's leg, its eyes shining with trust and something else she could not name, an understanding that they were now all in this together. Suddenly, a sharp cry echoed through the trees. The hunters were regrouping, their voices carrying a dark promise. Lyra's heart raced. She had survived the forest's trap, but the real danger had only begun. Cale's eyes met hers, silver and unwavering. "Prepare yourself," he said. "They will come for you again. And next time you must be ready to fight, not just with power, but with every part of your heart and mind." Lyra felt a strange mixture of fear and determination. She had chosen this path when she saved the cub. She could not turn away now. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat was tied to Cale, to the cub, and to the forest itself. As they moved deeper into the shadows, the moonlight filtering through the branches, Lyra realized something. Survival was no longer about avoiding danger. It was about embracing it, understanding it, and finding strength in places she had never looked before. And Cale was no longer just a protector. He was a mystery, a force, and a challenge she could not ignore. The pull between them was undeniable, a tension that crackled like lightning in the air, binding them together even as the hunters lurked in the darkness, waiting. For the first time, Lyra understood the full weight of her choices. She had acted with compassion, but the consequences were far greater than she had imagined. The cub's life, her own, the forest, and even Cale's fate were all entwined now in a web of magic, power, and destiny. And in the distance, the hunter's cries grew louder, a reminder that the world outside this forest would not let her rest. The forest's shadows deepened, whispering of trials to come, of secrets to uncover, and of the bond between a mortal healer and an alpha king whose past was as dark as the night itself. Lyra clutched the cub close, her heart beating fast. She had survived the first test, but the forest, the hunters, and the mysteries of Cale's realm were far from over. Would she have the courage to face what was coming, and the strength to trust a being who was both her guardian and her enigma? The forest had grown darker, thicker, as if it were alive with an awareness of what was to come. Lyra walked cautiously beside Cale, her hands brushing against the gnarled trunks, feeling the pulse of energy beneath the bark. The cub followed closely, its golden eyes now glimmering with a strange, otherworldly light. It moved with confidence that belied its size, a silent guardian, connected to both Lyra and Cale in ways she still did not fully understand. The air was heavy, filled with the scent of wet earth, moss, and something older, something ancient and powerful. Lyra's mind raced. Every step she took seemed measured, purposeful, as though the forest itself guided her, but danger was never far. The hunters were still out there, and she knew that they would return with greater force. Cale's presence beside her was steady, unyielding. He did not speak much, but his watchful eyes missed nothing. The rustle of a branch, the faintest whisper in the wind. Lyra could feel the power radiating from him, a presence so strong it seemed to shape the forest around him. She tried to focus on that strength, allowing it to bolster her courage, yet she could not ignore the tension in the air between them. A silent question neither dared to voice. As they moved deeper into the shadows, they came upon an ancient stone temple, half buried in moss and vines. Its walls were carved with symbols she did not recognize, glowing faintly as if reacting to their presence. Lyra stopped, her heart quickening. "What is this place?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cale's eyes scanned the structure. "A place of power," he said finally. "Long before my kind walked these forests, this temple was built to protect what is most precious." He paused, his gaze lingering on her. "And now it calls to you." "To me?" Kyle nodded. "The magic you awakened is tied to this place. It is connected to the cub and to me. You must understand it if you are to survive what is coming." Her pulse quickened. She had spent her life helping others, tending wounds and curing sickness. But now she stood on the edge of something, far greater, something that required courage beyond what she had ever known. And yet, despite her fear, she felt a strange thrill, an exhilaration at being part of a story that was larger than herself. Inside the temple, the air was cooler, charged with energy that made her skin tingle. Symbols along the walls seemed to shimmer as she moved, and the cub padded forward, stopping at the center of a circular stone platform. It let out a soft whine, tilting its head as if listening to something invisible. Cale stepped beside her, his eyes on the cub. "It senses the prophecy," he said softly. "You may not understand now, but the cub is key to what must happen. Its life, your choices, and my curse. They are intertwined." Lyra's chest tightened. "Curse?" she repeated, her voice barely audible. Cale's expression darkened, shadows flickering across his sharp features. "I am bound," he said simply, "bound to this forest, to its magic, and to a past that will not let me love freely. My strength is not enough to break it alone." Lyra's heart ached at the vulnerability in his voice. The Alpha King, so commanding, so fierce, yet here he was, revealing a fracture she had not expected. She wanted to reach out, to offer comfort, yet she hesitated. There was power in him, and she feared the depth of what she might unleash if she stepped too close. The cub whimpered again, nuzzling her hand. She knelt beside it, stroking its fur. Somehow its courage gave her courage. Its trust made her resolve stronger. She could not fail, not now, not ever. Before she could think further, a sudden rustling from the temple's entrance made her jump. The hunters had returned, moving with unnatural grace, their weapons glinting in the dim light. But this time, they were not alone. Shadows seemed to twist around them, bending toward the hunters as though alive. Cale stepped forward, his silver eyes glowing. "You will not touch it," he said, voice like thunder. Shadows rose from the floor, curling around him, forming barriers of light and darkness intertwined. Lyra felt the pull of her own power, rising in response. Her hands glowed faintly, warmth spreading through her arms, her chest, her very soul. She had never felt anything like it, strength that was part of her, yet connected to the forest, the cub, and Cale. The hunters advanced, but the moment they entered the circle of the temple, they were forced back by an unseen force. Lyra gasped, realizing that the energy was responding to her thoughts, her emotions, her will. Fear and courage collided, and the magic responded, shielding the cub and Cale. Cale glanced at her, a flash of awe in his silver eyes. "Control it," he said. "Do not let it control you. The forest will obey, but only if you command it with your heart, not your fear." Lyra nodded, focusing on the cub, on Cale, on the need to protect both. She could feel the energy flow through her, bending and shaping the shadows, pushing the hunters back. Each movement of her hand sent ripples of power outward, forcing the intruders to retreat, step by step. The hunters faltered, and Cale pressed forward, his movement swift and precise, combining his own shadow magic with Lyra's energy. Together they created a barrier that no ordinary force could breach. The cub growled, small sparks of magic dancing along its fur, and the hunters finally retreated into the darkness, leaving the temple and its guardians untouched. Cale's breathing was steady, controlled, though his eyes lingered on Lyra with intensity. "You are stronger than you know," he said, "but this is only the beginning. Others will come, and they will not hesitate to take what you protect. You must be ready to face them. And yourself." Lyra's heart raced. She had faced danger before, but never like this. Her power, Cale's presence, the cub's strange connection. It was overwhelming, yet exhilarating. She realized that her courage had grown not from her own strength alone, but from the trust she had placed in Cale, the bond forming between them despite the shadows of his curse. They moved deeper into the temple, finding a chamber filled with ancient symbols, each glowing faintly. Lyra's eyes were drawn to a circle carved into the floor, intricate and delicate. The cub padded into the center, and suddenly the circle flared with light. Lyra's heart leapt. The prophecy, it was beginning. Cale knelt beside her, his hand hovering over the glowing symbols. "This is where your choices will matter most," he said. "The cub, the forest, and even I. We are all bound to the path you now walk. Do not falter, Lyra." Lyra nodded, feeling the weight of destiny settle on her shoulders. She had acted out of compassion, saving the cub from a hunter's snare, but now she realized that act had pulled her into a world far larger and more dangerous than she could have imagined. Her courage was no longer enough. She would need wisdom, strength, and trust in ways she had never known. Cale's silver eyes met hers, softening ever so slightly. "You are ready," he said. "But are you ready to accept what this forest will demand of you and of me?" Lyra felt a shiver run through her. She had no choice but to continue, to face the trials that awaited, and to confront the strange pull she felt toward the Alpha King. Their fates were intertwined now, and the bond between them was growing stronger, even as danger loomed. The forest seemed to respond to their connection, shadows twisting and curling, the air vibrating with power. The cub nuzzled her hand, golden eyes shining with trust and determination. Lyra realized that they were no longer merely companions. They were guardians, bound together by fate, magic, and something far deeper than either fully understood. Suddenly, a distant sound echoed through the temple, a voice, soft and melodic, yet filled with menace. Lyra's heart tightened. Someone, or something, was approaching, drawn by the power she had awakened. Cale stiffened, silver eyes flashing. "They have come," he said, "and this time there will be no retreat. You must be ready to fight, not just for survival, but for the lives and magic we protect." Lyra's pulse quickened. Fear and anticipation collided in her chest. She was ready, or as ready as anyone could be when facing forces she barely understood. The cub growled, small sparks of light flickering along its fur, and Cale's presence loomed over her, protective and commanding. In that moment, Lyra understood the full truth. Her life, the cub, Cale's fate, and the forest itself were all bound together. Each choice she made would ripple through their world, and the bond forming between her and Cale would be tested in ways she could not yet imagine. And in the distance the shadows shifted. The voice grew louder, and the prophecy whispered through the air. The trials were far from over, and the heart of the forest demanded courage, sacrifice, and a trust that would stretch beyond the limits of mortal understanding. Lyra's hands tightened around the cub. She would not falter. She would face whatever came, and she would do it alongside Cale, the Alpha King whose heart, despite centuries of solitude and curse, seemed inexorably tied to hers. The battle for the cub, and for the forest, was only beginning, and the choices she made in the shadows would shape the fate of all who lived within its reach. The air was thick with magic, heavy and electric, as Lyra and Cale stood before the heart of the forest. The ancient trees bent toward them, their twisted branches forming an archway that glimmered with silver light. The cub, now fully grown yet still small enough to curl around Lyra's feet, growled low and steady, its golden eyes glowing with power. From the shadows of the clearing, the fallen queen appeared. Her presence was like a storm, dark and unyielding. She moved with the grace of someone who had walked the world for centuries, and her eyes held a hunger that chilled the blood. Her power radiated outward, seeking to claim the cub and the magic within Lyra. Cale stepped forward, his silver eyes blazing. Shadows rose around him like living armor, swirling with energy that made the forest tremble. "You will not take what belongs to this forest," he said, voice like thunder, resonating through the trees. The fallen queen smiled, sharp and cruel. "You think this forest protects you, Alpha King," she said, but even here, magic can be broken. And this child, she gestured toward the cub, will serve me, or it will die. Lyra's chest tightened. She had never faced a foe like this, one so full of hatred and dark magic. Her heart pounded, yet she felt a strange calm rise within her. She was no longer alone. Kale was beside her, the cub was with her, and the forest itself seemed to hum in anticipation. "You will fail," Lyra said, her voice steady. "You cannot claim what we protect. You do not understand the bond between us." The queen laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Bond, mere sentiment, cannot stop me." Kael's shadow surged forward, forming a wall of darkness that met the queen's energy. The air crackled with light and shadow colliding, the forest shaking beneath the force of magic unleashed. Lyra felt the pulse of power within her respond. Her hands glowed as she reached toward the energy surrounding the cub. She did not control it fully yet, but she could sense it bending to her will. The cub nuzzled her hand, and a surge of warmth traveled through her chest. She realized that her power was strongest when she acted from courage, from trust, and from love, not from fear. She lifted her hands, and light spread outward, intertwining with Kael's shadow, forming a shield that pushed the queen backward. The fallen queen's eyes widened in surprise. "Impossible!" she shouted, raising her hands to strike again. But Kael moved with fluid precision, blocking each attack while keeping her away from Lyra and the cub. His strength was immense, but even he could not do it alone. Lyra took a deep breath, focusing entirely on the bond she felt between her, Kael, and the cub. She whispered words she did not fully understand, yet the forest seemed to answer, the trees glowing faintly, their branches weaving together like a net of protection. The cub growled again, stepping forward, its magic flaring brightly. Sparks danced across its fur, and the queen stumbled, momentarily blinded. Kael's eyes met Lyra's. "Do it," he said. "Give the forest your will. Protect the cub. Protect this land." Lyra closed her eyes. She felt the energy within her, raw and powerful, but also alive and connected to the forest and Kael. Her hands rose, and a wave of light surged outward, colliding with the queen's dark energy. The force of the clash made the ground quake, and wind swept through the clearing, carrying whispers of ancient magic. The queen screamed, a sound of frustration and rage, as her energy faltered under the combined force of Lyra, Kael, and the cub. Shadows and light twisted together in a spectacular dance, the forest itself seeming to join the fight. Trees glowed, roots shifted, and the very earth trembled as if alive. Kael stepped closer to Lyra, his voice low and firm. "Do not hold back. You are the heart of this magic. Trust it, and trust yourself." Lyra felt her fear dissolve, replaced by resolve. She would not let the queen take the cub, nor allow the forest to fall. With a final surge of will, she unleashed her full power, a brilliant light that washed over the clearing. The queen's dark energy shattered, dissipating into the mist. She fell to her knees, defeated but alive, her power broken. The forest fell silent, the wind stilled, the trees relaxed, and the air felt lighter, almost as if it were breathing. Lyra sank to her knees, exhausted, but the cub nuzzled her hand, golden eyes full of trust and gratitude. Kael approached, kneeling beside her. "You did it," he said softly. "You protected the cub, the forest, and me." Lyra looked up at him, her chest heaving. "We did it," she said, realizing the truth of his words. Without Kael, without the cub, without the forest's magic, she could not have succeeded. For a long moment, they sat in silence, the forest around them glowing softly with renewed life. The cub curled against Lyra's side, its fur warm and comforting. And Kael's presence, once intimidating and untouchable, now felt steady and gentle beside her. "You are bound to me," Cale said finally, his silver eyes meeting hers. "Not by force, but by choice, by trust, by what we have faced together." Lyra felt a shiver run through her. "Bound?" she repeated. "Yes," he said. "You risked your life for something smaller than yourself, and in doing so you awakened a power within you, and within me, that cannot be undone. Our fates are intertwined." Lyra's heart swelled. She had come into the forest alone, scared, unsure of herself. Now she felt a strength she had never known, a courage born of love, trust, and sacrifice. The bond she shared with Cale was not just survival. It was something deeper, something eternal. The cub let out a soft whine and nuzzled her hand, reminding her that life went on and that there was joy even after darkness. She smiled, tears brimming in her eyes, and leaned against Cale's shoulder. He did not move away. Instead, he allowed her to rest, his silver eyes scanning the forest, ensuring that no danger remained. "The prophecy is complete?" Lyra asked softly, her voice almost a whisper. Cale nodded. "Yes, but prophecies are never simple. They are guides, not rules. You have given life, trust, and courage to the forest. You have healed more than wounds. You have healed the past, and perhaps me as well." Lyra tilted her head, unsure what he meant. "You? Healed?" Cale's lips curved slightly, the first real smile she had seen from him. "The curse that bound me was not broken by strength alone," he said. "It was broken by courage, selflessness, and trust. By you." Lyra's chest tightened. She had not acted to break a curse or fulfill a prophecy. She had acted to save a small, trembling life. And yet, somehow, that simple act had changed everything. The cub yipped softly, and Cale laughed, a deep, rich sound that echoed through the forest. Lyra smiled, feeling the tension and fear of the past days melt away, replaced by a warmth she could not describe. They rose together, the cub leading the way as they walked through the forest, now alive with magic. The trees seemed to lean closer, their branches whispering gratitude and peace. Lyra felt a sense of belonging she had never known. This forest, Cale and the cub were her home now, a place where courage and love could thrive together. Cale stopped at the edge of a clearing, turning to Lyra. "You risked everything," he said. "Yet here you are, stronger, wiser, and alive. That is rare in any world, mortal or otherwise." Lyra looked up at him, green eyes meeting silver. I never imagined it would be like this," she said softly. "That one choice could lead to so much." Kyle reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "Choices are the threads of destiny," he said. "And some threads, once chosen, cannot be unraveled. You have woven ours together, Lyra." For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. There was no need for words. The bond between them was clear, unspoken, yet powerful. The cub nuzzled her hand again, golden eyes glowing with quiet joy. Finally, Cale knelt beside her fully. "You spent your last breath protecting a life smaller than your own," he said softly. "Yet I feel it anew in every heartbeat we share. That is the power of what you have done, and the beginning of what we can be." Lyra's heart swelled. She had entered the forest alone, unsure of herself. Now, she stood in a world full of magic, love, and trust. A world that she had helped protect, and a future she could share with Cale. The cub bounded ahead, playful and free, and the forest seemed to sigh with relief. Lyra and Cale walked together, side by side, the shadows and light intertwining as they moved forward. There would be challenges ahead, of course, but for the first time they faced them not as individuals, but as a bond forged through courage, sacrifice, and trust. And as the moonlight poured over the forest, bathing them in silver, Lyra understood the truth of their journey. Love and courage, even in the darkest places, could ignite the most powerful magic of all. The forest whispered their names. The cub yipped joyfully, and the Alpha King smiled, a man no longer bound by curse, but by trust and redemption.